show. What's up?
What's up?
What's up? The show.
What's up?
What's up?
What's up? What's up? What's up?
What's up?
What's up?
All right, hello Foxborough. Welcome to What's Up. We are here at the Massachusetts State House in Boston, and we hope to get some good interviews with Senator Paul Feeney and perhaps some other surprise guests, depending on how it goes. So we are currently on the balcony of the State House overlooking Boston right now. All right, so Senator Feeney, for my first question, why and when did you get into politics?
For me, I can point back to when I was 11 years old. As crazy as that sounds, I was living in a community out in central Massachusetts in a town called Auburn, and my family had just moved out there. I had a younger brother who was just born, and my parents were both working, and they came home one day to a letter from the community, from the Board of Health. And the letter said that we should immediately cease and desist drinking or bathing in our water in our home. And of course, that's a shock to the family. And what we found out was that they were doing random well sampling. We had a private well that would provide us with our drinking water, and that the well was contaminated. And the reason why it was contaminated was there was a business behind our home for years that was knowingly dumping cancer-causing agents, chemicals basically, into a cracked storage container. So the long story short behind that is my parents, not knowing what to do, having a young family in a home where we couldn't drink our water, they started to organize. They went to the Board of Selectmen, and they petitioned the town to get safe town drinking water to our home. And I remember watching my parents go through that and organize and get the neighbors together and really go to fight for something that was so much more than just us. It was really the entire neighborhood that we were in was at risk. And they went to the Board of Select Persons, and I remember they fought for it, and it was quite an ordeal. And there was one particular individual on that board of selectmen who really fought for our family. And I remember thinking at the time, that's how government should work, right? We should really do what we can to take care of people in our community. So that was kind of an eye-opening experience for me at 11. I can remember my dad going to town meeting and going to the board, and I always took an interest in that. And I saw firsthand how government can really help people and help families. So I continued to have an interest in that. I got involved in the workplace when I first got a job out of high school. I started driving a truck for the telephone company, and I got involved in my union and fighting for my fellow employees, making sure we had job protections, making sure that we had safety on the job. And I did that professionally for probably the last 20 years. I think I've been working alongside my colleagues to advocate for legislation that benefits really workers all over the Commonwealth. So I did that and felt that I kind of found my niche. I found a way that I could give back, and then had the pleasure and the opportunity to serve as the chief of staff to my predecessor, Senator Jim Timilty, in 2005, and really learned a lot. Learned a lot about the legislative process, learned a lot about the district. So when I had the opportunity to run myself, I did. And I ran for selectman in Foxborough and served there for a term. And since then, I've been just trying to find ways to give back. So I know it's a long answer to your short question, but I'm blessed every single day to have this opportunity. And it's been quite a path to get here. And now, every day when I come to work in this building and get to fight for people like you and your family and others throughout the district, it's just, you get to see that in politics, even though sometimes it's a dirty word these days and people look at government like it, sometimes that they're the problem. We have a lot of work to do, but ultimately we have the ability to change the face of things for the better. And there is no better opportunity than to serve in the Massachusetts State Senate, where I have that chance every single day to make things better for people throughout my district and throughout the state.
All right. So in the last election, you won by 20,000 votes. In the election prior to that, you only won by 600. What does that say in your opinion?
Yeah, so politics is funny. Of course, things have changed over the years, but ultimately, the basic premise I feel when you're serving in government is, if people like you, they trust you, they'll support you. We can agree to disagree on issues every day, and we certainly do. I take votes. I work on certain legislation that many people advocate for. There are some opponents to it. But at the end of the day, people want to know that you're working hard for them, that you're going to be open, honest, and accessible. I had a mentor of mine, Nick, a while back, who always told me, Paul, it's not just about your ability or your inability. That'll come. It's about your availability and your accessibility. So the way I approach the job, since winning the election in 2017, is to just be available to everybody throughout the district. Whether it's a huge issue that I hear from hundreds of people on, or whether it's a single issue that's important to one family, it's important for me to be out there and to be available and to talk to people. And I think when people see that, when they realize that you're going to work hard, even if they disagree with you on an issue or two, they're supportive. And I think in last year's election, my re-election campaign to come back, people saw that, and we heard from folks throughout the district. I represent 160,000 people, and we heard from people throughout the district during that race. Look, Paul, one of the things that we like about you is that you come and you meet with us at Dunkin' Donuts and at Starbucks, and we can find you and we know how to get a hold of you. So I think that's the key to success in politics, and truthfully, that's the way any government official should approach the job. Be available, be accessible, be open and honest, and work hard. And I've done that, and I'm blessed. I get a great staff that helps me with that and that serves that district well.
So, as a senator, do you have any issues, do you think, that could be resolved, throughout Massachusetts?
Yeah, so right now we're working on, you came up right at the tail end of our budget season. So this past week, we actually sent our budget, our final legislative budget, to the governor's desk. The way that works, the governor comes out with his budget early in the year in January. The House then does it in April. The Senate does it in May. We debated it, and then a conference committee gets together and tries to resolve the differences in the two branches. That just happened last week, and on Monday of this week we actually voted on it. So we voted to send a great budget to the governor's desk. We're hoping that he's going to sign that this week, or actually next week, coming into the first week in August. And then, so that way we'll have a budget. And I always say to people in my district, a state budget is really a reflection of our values, right? Where do we prioritize? Where do we spend our money? People work hard for their money. Taxpayer money doesn't just, doesn't shake off of trees, right? We know that. We know people work hard. You got to be cognizant of that. But at the same time, our communities deserve to see a return on that investment. So I work hard with the legislative delegation, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. I'm a Democrat. Our state rep in Foxborough is a Republican. I work famously with him so that we can advocate together for our district and for our communities. So when you come together on these things, the budget is a big example of that. Just thousands and thousands of different priorities, whether they're local earmarks or kind of the bigger issues like education. We come together, we talk about it, we discuss it. This year it went a little bit long, but ultimately I think we got it right. And now, hopefully we'll have a signed budget by the governor in the next week or so. Some of the other issues that I'm working on, and I think that we need to really concentrate on in the coming months, the big one is the education funding, right? So, you're going into your sophomore year in school. That is an issue that affects every community in one way or another. Although some communities, there's a little bit more of a gap in spending than others. What we need to do is to be able to find out, where does that gap exist? How do we make sure that every school district across the Commonwealth is getting enough resources from the state to provide quality, education, public education for all of our students? That's not an easy thing to do. Like I said, every school district is different, every community is different, but ultimately we have to look at the situation and figure out, okay, this community here needs a little bit more help than this one. And then it's important for all of us. I'm one of 40 in the Senate. There's 40 state senators. We need to advocate aggressively for our district. So when I come up and talk to the chairpersons of the Education Committee, I talk about Foxborough. I talk about Mansfield. I talk about Norton. I talk about all the communities in our district. Seekonk, Rehoboth. Rehoboth is part of the regional school district, so they're a little bit different. But it's important for me to advocate for those school systems. That's why I'm sent here. So yesterday I had a conversation with a colleague of mine, a senator from Boston, and we were talking about the education bill. And I said, look, I'm going to be pretty outspoken about our districts. We're different than some of the school districts in Western Mass or in Merrimack Valley. We all have the same issues to deal with, but each community approaches it differently. My job is to make sure that I bring them all together and advocate for it. So the education piece is going to really take over a lot of the conversation over the next few months, and rightfully so.
Do you feel that you work effectively with your senatorial colleagues?
Absolutely, you have to. You can't do this job. You can't do this job effectively if you don't work together with people. That's the art of politics. That's what we do. Just like you and your friends at school or in the neighborhood, you don't always agree, right? You might not agree on what you're going to do for the day, or if you're doing a project, you're working on a project with your friends. You don't always agree, but you have to come to some sort of compromise, some sort of decision that everybody feels like they had a seat at the table. For us in the Senate, it's an incredible place to work because there are 40 of us that all have equal-sized districts, very unique. Everybody represents a district that's different than the one next to it. But for us, it's important that we have those conversations. When I'm here in this building, like I say all the time, I come in and my day, goes from issue to issue to issue to issue. But the one constant is that when I see my colleagues and when we're meeting, I had a meeting yesterday with a couple of them, we understand where each other is coming from. And when you start with that level of trust, that I know that one of my colleagues in the Senate, whether they're a Democrat or a Republican, whether they're in leadership, they've been here for 20 years, or if they're brand new, that we start off with that level of trust for each other, that I know that that person is doing the best for their district, just like I am. And it creates an atmosphere of, I guess, just, honesty and collegiality, where we know that we're all in the same boat. We're just trying to figure things out. And again, it's not, people look at this job, and it's kind of like magic. What do they do up there behind closed doors? I joke about it. We're not splitting the atom, right? We're not sending somebody to the moon. We're having conversations. And I think over the years, we've lost the art of people just having a conversation and figuring things out. So, even in school, and I see it all the time, right? I mean, we're so, we're hooked on our phones, right? Everybody's got their head down into the cell phones and are on their devices. For us here in the Senate, we sit down on a table like this, we look each other eye to eye, and we have conversations. Again, don't always agree, but at the end of the day, I know that the product is better for the people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and better for my district when we get along. So, and the thing about the Senate that I find truly incredible when I come to work here every day, it's not like the stuff that you see on the news. You hear about Washington, D.C., where nobody's getting along and nobody can talk to each other. That is not the case here in Massachusetts, and I don't say that lightly. I truly, truly believe it, and I will tell anybody that asks me how impressive it is that people come together on so many different issues that face the people across Massachusetts.
So, for my last question, do you, as a senator, of course, do you think that you've done well for the Commonwealth and for our district?
Yeah. I hope so. Certainly, we have the opportunity to ask that question of the voters every 2 years, which I think is, that's probably the best part about this job, is that you do get instant feedback. If you're not doing the work, people tell you. I like I said earlier, I try and make myself available and accessible. And one of the things in doing that is not just to show up at places and just be there, but to have conversations with people and to say, hey, look, I'm working on this bill. What do you think? My colleague filed this bill. It's going to come before my committee in the next few months. Weigh in on this. What are your thoughts? What are your ideas? The people in this building, the 200 legislators, 40 senators, 160 state reps, we don't corner the market on ideas. Those ideas come from our district. They come from the people that we interact with every day. So for me to be effective, and I think we've done it since I've been here on day one, it's important for me to hear from people in the district, to hear from people across the state. Right before you came in, I was just looking at our email box. I'm on average now probably 200-300 emails a day, easy. And they run the gamut from people talking about schools and education to public safety and seniors. We have a lot of issues to deal with, and you try and focus on the ones that are most important, certainly to us individually. But that is framed by the people that I represent. The people from Foxborough, what are they emailing me about today? What are they interested in? Are we talking about public transportation and commuter rail and the ability to get to Boston without sitting for 2 hours on 95 and on 128 in traffic? That's a big issue in our district. So, it's important for me to bring those issues up, to elevate them up in the Senate chamber, and to make sure that we're all working on those things. One of the one of the reasons I think I've been able to be so effective in this job, number one, like I said, being available and accessible. But number two, I get a great staff. My staff works incredibly hard. People think you go into public service and you get all sorts of great benefits and pay. It's difficult on them. Public service generally pays less. They come to work for the people of the district. They work hard every single day. They're with me on nights and weekends. This is a 7-day-a-week job for me. It's 18 hours a day most of the time for me. And I ask a lot of our staff. And I ask a lot of our staff because the district demands that. And they deserve to have people that are out working on these issues, meeting with folks in the district. So I'm blessed. I get a great staff. We work hard. And with that, and being available and listening to people and fighting for the needs of our district, I think we've been extremely effective. This year in the budget alone, we advocated for all sorts of different priorities. It used to be that even before I took the job, you hear the word earmark, and an earmark basically means that we're taking a portion of the budget, we're taking a little bit of money, and we're stipulating it has to be spent on a certain item in a community or a program. So the earmarks, which everybody says, we're spending more money. The money's there in the budget. The important part is that each senator, they know their district better than anybody, right? I know the 9 cities and towns that I represent better than anybody in this building. So it's important for me to look at what are those local priorities. This year in the budget for the town of Foxborough, we got $30,000 for the Rodman Performing Arts Center at the Orpheum Theater. That was an important thing, right? They're doing great programs over there. There's a lot of activity. We want to make sure that we're supporting that so that it's viable and people can go and get involved in the arts. And I saw you there at one point, right? So that we can, kind of re-energize the creative arts community in Foxborough, in our downtown, to make sure that we're investing in it. So for me, I came to our Senate budget debate and we put in an earmark and an amendment and said $30,000 so that we can help make some improvements to the Rodman Performing Arts Center at the Orpheum. That's on the governor's desk right now. I'm very proud of that, right? We got that. It wasn't easy, but the Senate adopted it. We got into the conference committee report, which is when they decided to, what the final language was going to be. And now that's on the governor's desk. So hopefully that'll benefit the people of Foxborough, as well as a host of dozens and dozens of other items that we've gotten, not only for Foxborough, but the 9 cities and towns I represent.
All right, well, thank you so much for your interview, Senator.
Thank you.
Pleasure to see you again, I should say.
Yeah, great seeing you.
So I am currently in the newly renovated Senate chambers directly underneath the Golden Dome at the State House. We just finished up our conversation with Senator Paul Feeney. It was a really good conversation. We got to know a lot about him and a lot about his job. And honestly, great interview. So we are currently in the Great Hall of Flags, which was dedicated in 1990 under Governor Dukakis. So in this Great Hall, there is supposedly the flag of every single town in Massachusetts, even Foxborough's. So one of the most interesting rooms in the State House. All right, so Senator, tell us what your name and position is, please.
Sure. State Senator Sal DiDomenico, and I'm Assistant Majority Leader in the Mass State Senate.
So what towns or districts do you represent?
I have a big district. I have Everett, Chelsea, Charlestown, Alston, Brighton, Cambridge, and the west end of Boston, where the Boston Garden is.
So are you drafting any new bills or legislation right now?
Yeah, we're working on a very important bill that'll have a big impact for our students and our schools. It's called Breakfast After the Bell. So instead of having our kids go to school and have some kids go to the cafeteria, qualify for breakfast, and other kids going into the classroom, we are going to put all the kids together in a community setting and make sure that after the first bell, all kids have breakfast and eating together. Instead of saying some have it, some don't, and some having, feeling bad about not being able to eat with their peers. So that is going to bring all the kids together. And hopefully all the schools across the state will adopt that bill.
All right, so as another quick question, do you happen to, by chance, have any, affiliation with Senator Paul Feeney?
So Senator Feeney and I are very, very good friends. I supported Senator Feeney in his primary when he ran for state senate, and I also knew him when he worked in the union. And so we worked for Senator Sanders as well in the national campaign. Senator Feeney is a leader in this chamber. He's well respected by all of us. The Senate President loves him. We all love him, and we're happy to have him as part of our team.
So prior to being a senator, what were you doing?
I was a city councilor in the city of Everett, and I was also a staff person. So I was the chief of staff to the senator before me. So I worked on both sides of the aisle. I worked in the staff level, and now I'm in the Senate. So I get to see how important our staff is and how much work that they actually do every day. And a lot of the work that's done in this chamber and in our offices, our staff does all the research, they do all of the writing legislation, and we make the speeches.
All right, so that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for your time,
My
Senator.
pleasure. Thanks a lot.
All right, so we are currently in the State House, of course, but we are witnessing some of Massachusetts' most important flags. So right here we have the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry Brigade, which was the very first regiment to have an all-African-American unit. So that pretty much means this was during the Civil War. So that was the first regiment which had African-American volunteers. So, and you might actually be wondering, how was this built? So at the time, Massachusetts was very low on stone workers and marble makers, so we imported a lot of them from Italy, and now a lot of these Italians have settled in the North End. So that explains where the Italian influence is from. All right, thank you so much for watching What's Up. I'm Nick Brancaccia reporting for What's Up, brought to you by the Foxborough Youth Productions. That's all. Have a great day.